All right, let's recap and relive Sunday night Super Bowl beatdown with our New York Post sports columnist, Mike Vaccaro. Mike, what a game. I can't even say what a game. What a beatdown that was. I guess let's get straight into it. What was your thoughts on that old school butt kicking?
Well, the Eagles are awfully impressive, and it's got to be a warning shot to the rest of the NFC East. Certainly, our friends with the Giants, they have to compete with this team pretty much as is for the next couple of years. Both sides of the ball, just a complete beatdown. And look, we know the Chiefs are one of the great operators of dark arts when it comes to winning
Yeah.
games, and they were just never in this game, and it was impressive. I mean, there are very few times when you're a sports fan when you can take a deep breath at the opening kickoff and kind of relax the whole rest of the game. And I think, other than maybe the first drive of the game, this was a breeze for the Eagles and their fans. You never get that, but that's a testament to just how good the Eagles looked on Sunday and how dominant they played.
Yeah, I wonder if this kind of changes the mindset or the approach that the Giants have this offseason because while everyone's talking quarterback, 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 the Eagles did it in the trenches last night. And it's like, if you can't protect Patrick Mahomes, how are you going to protect a Cam Ward or Shador Sanders against this front seven? And on the same thing on the other flip side of it, if you can't get after a Jalen Hurts or stop the run against a Saquon Barkley, then it's like you have zero chance against this team. But looking at the way they were able to kind of crush the Chiefs' dynasty the way they were, do you think that the Chiefs are going to be able to rebound from this, or do you think there's going to be some sort of Super Bowl hangover next season?
Well, look, I mean, the Chiefs got just about equally dominated when they lost the Super Bowl to the Buccaneers a couple of years ago. The offensive line was overwhelmed. It looked very similar to this game, and they were able to retool and win two Super Bowls. Now they did that by rebuilding through the draft. Clearly, they have to address that offensive line, which is a problem. Um, Look, I mean, Mahomes had a terrible game yesterday, but you're still building around one of the best quarterbacks that's ever lived,
Yeah.
and that's not a bad place to start. Um, can they do it? I mean, certainly they have a very front office that's been able to maintain this level of play for as long as they have. And look, they're still the top dog in the AFC. So I think they need to be retooled, but I mean, I think that this is a team that's capable, especially the front office, is capable of putting out a pretty solid product again next year. They might
Yeah,
have a little more, they might have a little bit harder process. The AFC West is getting a little bit harder. A bunch of Hall of Fame coaches in that division. They might not win 15 games again, but they have proven that they know how to win for the most part. And obviously, this was an outlier from what we've seen the last couple of years.
yeah, I'm wondering because, like you said, they need to shore up that offensive line, but also on the outside, receiver wise, I'm looking at a older DeAndre Hopkins who just didn't show up yesterday. Juju Smith-Schuster was your leading receiver, pretty much your leading receiver outside of Worthy, who's a great piece to kind of build off of, but he's kind of like that track speed guy. So I wonder who's going to be that guy on the perimeter, on that outside that they can bring in to be the man, the wide receiver one. And on the other side of it, we got Travis Kelce, who we know is a future Hall of Famer, but he hasn't looked like the Travis Kelce of his prime. I understand he had what, 100-yard game earlier in the postseason, but he kind of went over yesterday and kind of put up a goose egg. So, do you think that was Travis Kelce's last game?
I think if they would have won, it definitely would have been.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be hard for him to walk away off of that. The problem is, we all saw a diminished Travis Kelce this year. And I think a lot of people bought into the idea, well, they're kind of keeping him in the garage for the regular season. They'll bring him out when the games really matter. And he did that against the Texans. Obviously, yesterday against the Eagles, he was a non factor. And he looked awfully old. I'd say it's 50-50. I mean, I think there's probably going to be a lot of thinking. He's going to go through a lot of deep thinking about whether he wants to go through this again. But look, it's definitely an issue. I mean, when you look at the Chiefs when they first became dominant 5-6 years ago, they had so many weapons offensively, and Mahomes knew how to maximize that. It's a little bit different now. Part of it is the line. Part of it, though, like you said, they don't have a Tyreek Hill who they can
Yeah.
figure out, a way to get him the ball and will change the game with one play. Kelce used to be like that. Obviously, Kelce isn't of that isn't that highly isn't that good anymore. or at least not as good as he was when he was younger. So, these are all things they have to address. And it's I think what last night reminded us is just how hard it is to win a Super Bowl. The Chiefs made it kind of look easy the last couple of years, and it's not easy. It's probably the hardest thing in sports. Nick Sirianni talked about, why this is so satisfying is because, football is the ultimate team game, and everybody's got to be on the same page for, 17 weeks during the regular season, and then on the way through the playoffs. It's a hard thing to do, and I think we were reminded of that last night.
Yeah, when it came to Travis Kelce, I think that storyline, we were kind of just waiting for him to win 3 in a row, propose to Taylor Swift, and then just ride off in the sunset. But it's almost like Michael Strahan is the only one who's gotten to do that I can think of in I guess, recent years to be able to retire after a Super Bowl, and that was 17 years ago.
But yeah.
Peyton Manning as well. On the flip side of things, when it comes to the storyline of the game, especially here in New York, Saquon Barkley wins round 1 when it comes to Saquon versus the Giants. I mean, how fitting is it that Saquon ends this year after everything he's gone through with the Giants? I get the last 2 years, Mike, when it came to that contract. How fitting was it for that narrative, for that storyline for Saquon to win the Super Bowl this year?
Yeah, I think it's impossible not to be happy for the way things turned out for Saquon. And it's interesting. It was obvious that the Chiefs' game plan was we're not going to let this guy beat us. Yep. And I think it's a testament to just how good the Eagles are. I think we kind of gotten used to the idea that maybe they were where they were because they'd acquired Saquon, and we kind of forgot that they were built top to bottom about as good as any team in the NFL. And they proved that yesterday. But Saquon, winning the championship and obviously drinking it in afterward. Look, I mean, there are a lot of Giants fans that were angry with the way this turned out. Some were angry with Joe Shane. Some were a little bit angry with Saquon. But when you watch Saquon win this championship, you're not going to celebrate it like it's your own team. But I think if you're a human being, you have to feel good for a guy who obviously accomplished a great deal this year.
Yeah, and there were a lot of Giants fans conflicted watching this game yesterday. It's like, you don't want to root for the Eagles, who's been kind of like big brother in recent years, but you want to root for a guy like Saquon to have a strong game, but the Eagles not to win. So I know a lot of Giants fans that were kind of just conflicted because of the man Saquon was, for not only the player, but just the man that Saquon was during his time here in New York. And on another storyline was just that narrative about Jalen Hurts, about how he couldn't take over a game. I mean, it's easy to have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert as guys that you're throwing the ball to, but he was able to make plays with Jahan Dotson yesterday as well. Like, how impressed were you when it came to Jalen Hurts?
Well, I've been a big Jalen Hurts fan since 2018 when he was benched in the national championship game in Alabama and didn't mope, didn't sulk. When Tua wound up throwing the winning touchdown pass in overtime that night, he was the first guy on the top of the pile. I thought he branded himself as a great teammate that night. And it's really wonderful all these years later to see him have that moment, to see him have that game. He had a really good game 2 years ago against the Chiefs. By rights, could have won that game. He had one bad play where he dropped the ball. That was kind of a game changer. But start to finish last night, he had the Chiefs on their heels. He made a couple of big runs in the second half, which kind of solidified things. And he's a guy you love to see it when a young player rises to his capacity in a game like the Super Bowl, and he certainly did that yesterday. I mean, the Eagles don't win that game without him, and he was a very, very much deserved MVP. And look, on a team of MVPs, he really did step up, probably the biggest of all of them yet last night, and it's really good to see.
Mike, before I let you go, I got to get your thoughts because there are a lot of Giants fans that are upset with Michael Strahan right now for the whole flag, fly, Eagles fly thing on the Fox broadcast during his interview with Saquon. What are your thoughts on that? Should Mr. Mayor kind of sit Strahan down and be like, bro, what are you doing? What's going on here?
Well, Michael Strahan always marched to the beat of his own drummer when he was a player. So it's not surprising that he still does that as a broadcaster. Look, I mean, I think he also sees things the way a player does. And I think that he's able to relate to the things that Saquon went through. I think maybe if he gave him truth serum, he might want a do-over on that because there are people with a lot of long memories who root for the Giants. But you know what? I think that'll pass. The Giants have a lot more issues facing them than a guy who won a Super Bowl for them and how he behaved before the game. So, he'll probably have to answer that to that for a little bit. But like I said, to me, that's just Strahan being Strahan.
Lastly, we saw the roster that Howie Roseman, GM for the Eagles, have been able to kind of assemble. Does that the fact that they're so solid on the defensive and the offensive lines, do you think that changes the approach for Joe Schoen going into this offseason in terms of what that key piece or pieces needs to be to compete with the Philadelphia Eagles twice a year?
Well, I think it shouldn't, Brandon, because obviously they need a quarterback, but when you have as bad a season as the Giants had, the one thing you definitely need is just a lot more players, better players, and assembling a roster of better players, and that's really, it's there's no mystery as to why these two teams were both in the Super Bowls, because they had a lot of good players on both sides of the ball. There's no secret why the Giants had the kind of year they had, because they didn't have as many, or nearly as many. So yeah, look, the gap between the Giants and the Eagles is enormous right now. But how do you begin that? You begin that by stacking good players, by drafting well, by picking the right quarterback, whoever that quarterback might be. That's just one part of the process. They just need a better roster, and it's got to start now.
Thanks for hanging out with us, Mike.
Anytime, Brandon. Good talking to you.